A stray dog jumped on a man's car to take her dying puppies home. But this wasn't just a cry for help. It was a desperate mission to expose something darker than anyone could imagine. When a burned-out investigator stops for what seems like a random animal rescue, he has no idea the mother dog is leading him straight into a nightmare. But why would a wounded dog trust a broken man? What did she witness that no one else did? And how far will the enemy go to bury the truth? What happens when one forgotten man and one fearless dog risk everything to bring a monster's empire crashing down? You being here is a reminder. The quiet acts of love and kindness still matter. If you hold space for compassion, you're already part of this community. Joshua Brown stood in the parking lot of the remote veterinary clinic, his weathered face creasing with concern as he watched the injured German shepherd frantically pawing at his car door. Blood matted her dark fur, and her intelligent eyes held a desperate plea that made his heart clench. He'd seen plenty of stray dogs in his years as an insurance investigator, but something about this one was different. "Easy there, girl," he said softly, keeping his distance to avoid spooking her. But instead of running away, the dog became more agitated, whining and scratching at the car door with increasing urgency. When Joshua took a tentative step forward, the shepherd darted away, then stopped and looked back at him. She barked once, then twice, before running a few more steps and turning again. The pattern was unmistakable. She wanted him to follow. "You're trying to tell me something, aren't you?" Joshua muttered, his investigator's instincts stirring to life. The dog's behavior was too deliberate to ignore. Making a quick decision, Joshua began following the shepherd. She led him away from the clinic's parking lot and toward an abandoned construction site nearby. The place looked like it had been deserted mid-project, with half-finished structures and piles of debris scattered across the lot. The shepherd disappeared behind a stack of concrete blocks, and Joshua heard soft whimpering. His heart racing, he carefully made his way around the debris. What he found made his breath catch in his throat. 3 tiny puppies lay huddled together in a makeshift den, their small bodies trembling. Even to his untrained eye, they looked terribly ill. Their fur was dull and patchy, their breathing labored, and they barely responded when their mother nosed at them anxiously. "Oh, God," Joshua whispered, kneeling beside the den. The mother dog, whom he would later come to know as Duchess, paced nervously between him and her puppies, trying desperately to move one of them with her mouth. But the pup was too weak to hold its head up, let alone walk. Joshua's hands shook as he pulled out his phone and called the veterinary clinic. "I need help," he said when someone answered. "I found 3 critically ill puppies at the construction site next door. They need immediate medical attention." While waiting for help, Joshua watched as Duchess continued her frantic attempts to save her babies. Her determination stirred something deep inside him, a protective instinct he thought he'd lost years ago after his life fell apart. He couldn't just stand by and watch. "Let me help," he said softly to Duchess. To his surprise, she stopped her pacing and looked directly into his eyes. Despite her obvious fear and the trauma evident in her scarred body, she held his gaze steadily, as if measuring his worthiness to touch her precious babies. Moving slowly, Joshua removed his jacket and laid it on the ground. "We need to get them to the clinic," he explained, not feeling foolish at all for talking to the dog. "They need help right away." Duchess watched intently as Joshua carefully lifted each puppy and placed them in his jacket, creating a makeshift carrier. Her ears twitched at every whimper from her babies, but she didn't interfere. Instead, she stayed close, her eyes never leaving her puppies. "Come on," Joshua said, gathering the jacket's corners to create a secure bundle. "Let's get them help." He walked quickly but carefully back to his car, aware of Duchess following right at his heels. When he opened the back door, she jumped in without hesitation, making room for him to place the bundle of puppies beside her. The drive back to the clinic took less than 2 minutes, but it felt like an eternity. Joshua kept glancing in his rearview mirror, watching as Duchess tenderly nosed at each of her puppies, her whole body trembling with worry. As he pulled into the clinic's parking lot, Joshua saw the veterinary staff waiting outside with a stretcher. They rushed forward as soon as he stopped the car, but paused when Duchess let out a low growl. "It's okay," Joshua found himself saying, both to the staff and to Duchess. "They're here to help. They're going to save your babies." Something in his voice must have convinced her, because Duchess's growl subsided. She watched anxiously as the veterinary team carefully transferred her puppies from Joshua's jacket to the stretcher, then followed close behind as they rushed into the clinic. Standing in the parking lot, his empty jacket in his hands, Joshua felt the full weight of what had just happened settle over him. He'd come here for a routine insurance case, but in the span of 15 minutes, everything had changed. That desperate mother dog had awakened something in him, a sense of purpose he hadn't felt since his life had fallen apart. Inside the clinic, Joshua watched through the examination room window as a dark-haired veterinarian worked quickly over the puppies. Her movements were precise and purposeful, her face set in deep concentration. Duchess pressed against Joshua's leg, whining softly as she observed her babies being treated. The veterinarian stepped out of the exam room, pulling off her latex gloves. "I'm Dr. Rebecca Torres," she said, her warm eyes showing both concern and determination. "We've stabilized them for now, but they're not out of danger yet." "What's wrong with them?" Joshua asked, absently patting Duchess's head to comfort her. Dr. Torres's expression darkened. "These symptoms? I've seen them before. Too many times, actually." She glanced around the empty waiting room, then lowered her voice. "This wasn't natural illness. Those puppies were poisoned." Joshua felt his stomach twist. "Poisoned? You're sure?" "Follow me," Dr. Torres said, gesturing toward her office. Duchess tried to follow, but Dr. Torres smiled gently at her. "Don't worry, girl. My staff will come get us if anything changes with your babies." In her small office, Dr. Torres pulled out a thick file folder from her bottom desk drawer. "I've been documenting cases like this for months," she explained, spreading out photographs and medical reports, all showing the same symptoms, all connected to suspected illegal breeding operations. Joshua leaned forward, his old investigative instincts kicking in as he studied the documents. "Have you reported this to the authorities?" Dr. Torres' laugh held no humor. "Multiple times. They say there's not enough evidence to prove deliberate poisoning versus accidental exposure. Or they claim it's not a priority." She ran a hand through her hair in frustration. "Meanwhile, more dogs keep showing up sick or dying." Joshua picked up one of the photos, showing an emaciated mother dog with a litter of puppies. "This is organized cruelty," he said quietly. "These aren't isolated incidents." "Exactly," Dr. Torres exclaimed. "But nobody will listen." She looked at him curiously. "You said you're an insurance investigator." "Was," Joshua corrected, his voice turning bitter. "Now I just handle routine cases for whoever will hire me." Something in his tone made Dr. Torres study him more closely, but she didn't press. Instead, she asked, "Could you use those investigative skills to look into where these dogs are coming from? That construction site where you found Duchess and her puppies might be a good place to start." Joshua nodded slowly, already planning his approach. "I can check property records, building permits, ownership trails." He pulled out his phone and began making notes. "Do you have the exact address of the construction site?" For the next hour, Joshua sat in Dr. Torres' office, using his phone to access public records and real estate databases he still had access to from his insurance work. Dr. Torres brought him coffee and occasionally checked on the puppies, reporting that they were responding well to treatment. Then Joshua found something that made his blood run cold. He double-checked the records, hoping he was wrong, but the evidence was clear. The construction site was owned by Blackstone Development Corporation, a company he knew all too well. "Preston," he whispered, his hands clenching into fists. "What is it?" Dr. Torres asked, noticing his sudden tension. Joshua stared at his phone screen, old memories flooding back. "The property belongs to Preston Caldwell. He owns Blackstone Development." His voice was rough with suppressed emotion. Preston was my business partner 5 years ago. We had a successful insurance investigation firm together until I discovered he was running fraud schemes through our company. Dr. Torres sat down slowly, sensing there was more to the story. When I threatened to expose him, he turned everything around on me, Joshua continued. Used his connections to make it look like I was the one committing fraud. By the time the dust settled, I'd lost my reputation, my clients, my savings, everything. He let out a bitter laugh. He even took my house in the lawsuit. And now his company owns the property where we found these poisoned puppies, Dr. Torres said quietly, connecting the dots. Joshua nodded, feeling the old anger and hurt transform into something new, determination. This isn't just about the dogs anymore, he said. Preston's involved in this somehow. I know how he operates. Nothing happens on his properties without his knowledge. Dr. Torres leaned forward, her eyes intense. Will you help me investigate this? Really investigate, not just look up property records. Joshua looked through the office window to where Duchess lay outside the exam room, still watching over her puppies. 5 years ago, Preston had destroyed his life because Joshua had chosen to do the right thing. Now he had a chance to stop Preston from hurting others, both human and animal. Yes, he said firmly. I'll help you expose whatever's happening here. Joshua sat in his cramped apartment, surrounded by stacks of documents and his laptop's pale glow. His investigation into Blackstone Development had consumed him for the past 3 days. Each new discovery made his stomach turn, revealing layers of calculated cruelty that even he hadn't expected from Preston. 3 states, he muttered, pinning another document to his makeshift evidence board. Ohio, Indiana, Kentucky, all connected through shell companies. The pattern was brutally efficient. Preston's operation bred dogs in horrible conditions, forcing females like Duchess to produce litter after litter. The puppies, many with genetic health issues from inbreeding, were sold through legitimate-looking pet stores to unsuspecting families. When the animals inevitably got sick, Preston's insurance companies, operating under different names, would deny the claims, leaving devastated families with massive vet bills. Joshua's phone buzzed, a text from Dr. Torres with Duchess's latest test results. The German Shepherd's blood work showed markers of multiple recent pregnancies, far more than the 3 puppies they'd found. Joshua looked at the photo he'd taken of Duchess that first day, focusing on her haunted eyes and the healing wounds on her body. You escaped during the storm, didn't you, girl? He said softly to the picture. The violent weather 3 weeks ago had caused widespread damage, including part of the construction site's fencing. Duchess must have fled then, but something about her escape bothered him. The way she'd been so desperate to communicate, so focused on saving her puppies. Joshua pulled up the construction site blueprints again, comparing them to older property records. Something about the address had been nagging at him. When he finally made the connection, the truth hit him like a physical blow. No, he whispered, his hands shaking as he double-checked the coordinates. It can't be. But it was. The construction site where Duchess had led him, where Preston was building his newest legitimate breeding facility, was exactly where Joshua's childhood home had once stood. The house his parents had lost when Preston's schemes destroyed their lives. Joshua stumbled to his bathroom and splashed cold water on his face, fighting back waves of nausea. The location wasn't random. Preston had deliberately chosen this spot, knowing Joshua would eventually discover the connection. It was a calculated message. I took everything from you once, and I can do it again. Back at his desk, Joshua forced himself to focus through his anger. He pulled up satellite images of the construction site, noting how the foundation work had barely begun. Most of the property was still raw earth, with only a few concrete pads poured near the front. Where were you keeping them? He muttered, studying the images. There had to be existing structures somewhere nearby. Duchess and her puppies couldn't have come from nowhere. He expanded his search radius, looking at neighboring properties. An abandoned warehouse 2 blocks away caught his attention. It was also owned by a Blackstone subsidiary, and recent power records showed suspicious usage patterns. Joshua's phone rang. "Doctor." Torres again. "The puppies are stronger today," she said without preamble. "But I found something else in Duchess's blood work. There are traces of sedatives in her system, the kind used to keep breeding dogs docile." "She was drugged," Joshua said, his jaw clenching. "Probably to prevent exactly what she did, escaping and exposing the operation." "There's more, Doctor," Torres continued. "Based on hormone levels, she likely gave birth to at least 8 puppies recently, not just the 3 we found." Joshua felt his chest tighten. "The others?" "Probably didn't survive," Dr. Torres finished quietly. "Or they're still at the breeding facility. Either way, we need to find that location." "I think I have," Joshua said, sending her the warehouse coordinates. "But we need concrete evidence before we can act. Preston's too smart to leave obvious trails." "What about the construction site itself?" Dr. Torres asked. "The fact that it's your old family property. That can't be a coincidence." "It's not," Joshua said grimly. "Preston's sending me a message. He wants me to know he's still in control, still able to hurt me." He looked at Duchess's photo again, seeing the determination in her eyes despite her injuries. But he made a mistake this time. He didn't count on a mother's love being stronger than his cruelty. The German Shepherd had done more than escape. She deliberately sought help, choosing to trust despite her trauma. Her courage had exposed Preston's operation, and now Joshua had the chance to finally bring his former partner to justice. "We'll need more than paperwork," he told Dr. Torres. "Preston's got too many connections, too much influence. We need undeniable proof." "What are you thinking?" Joshua studied his evidence board where strings connected documents in an intricate web of deception. "I think it's time to do what I do best, investigate. But this time, we're not just exposing insurance fraud, we're saving lives." Dr. Rebecca Torres stared at her phone, her hands trembling slightly as she played the latest voicemail message for Joshua. The anonymous voice was cold and mechanical, distorted to hide its identity. "Drop the cases, Doctor. Stop treating the evidence. Some things are better left forgotten, for everyone's safety." Joshua watched her face carefully as she stopped the recording. They sat in her small office at the clinic, where the evening light cast long shadows through the blinds. Duchess lay protectively at Joshua's feet, her ears perking up at the threatening voice. "That's the 3rd call today," Rebecca said, trying to keep her voice steady. "They started right after I documented the blood work results from the other poisoned dogs." Joshua's jaw tightened. This is classic Preston. He always starts with threats, trying to scare people into backing down. He reached across the desk and gently squeezed her hand. "I've seen him destroy good people this way, making them too afraid to stand up to him." Rebecca squeezed back, drawing strength from his touch. "I'm not backing down. These animals can't speak for themselves. Someone has to fight for them." Duchess whined softly and pressed closer to Joshua's leg. He'd noticed how the German Shepherd became especially agitated whenever Preston's name was mentioned. Dr. Torres had picked up on it too during their examinations. "There's something else," Rebecca said, pulling out Duchess's medical file. "The trauma patterns I'm seeing, they're not just from general abuse. Her behavior shows signs of acute psychological distress, specifically triggered by male voices in certain situations." Joshua leaned forward. "What kind of situations?" "When men speak in angry or threatening tones," Rebecca explained. "But it's more specific than that. Watch this." She pulled up a video on her tablet showing Duchess during a routine examination. The dog was calm until a male vet technician dropped a metal instrument, creating a sharp sound. Duchess immediately went into a defensive posture, placing herself between the technician and the door. "She's not just frightened," Joshua observed. "She's guarding the escape route." Rebecca nodded. "Like she's protecting others from danger." Combined with her other symptoms and behaviors, I believe she witnessed something deeply traumatic, probably involving direct violence. Joshua felt sick as the pieces clicked together. Her mate, he said quietly. The father of her puppies. The blood work shows she had a bonded partner, Rebecca confirmed. But there's no trace of the male dog in any of Preston's registered breeding records. Because dead dogs don't need paperwork, Joshua said grimly. If the male wasn't producing profitable puppies, Preston would have eliminated the problem personally, Rebecca finished, her voice tight with anger, and Duchess saw it happen. Duchess whimpered softly, as if understanding their conversation. Joshua reached down to stroke her head, noting how she pressed into his touch, seeking comfort. They worked late into the night, spreading documents across Rebecca's desk as they traced connections between Preston's various shell companies. Property records, shipping manifests, and insurance claims painted a picture far darker than simple puppy mills. Look at these medication orders, Rebecca said, pointing to a spreadsheet. These quantities go way beyond what you'd need for normal breeding operations. And some of these drugs... She trailed off, looking troubled. What about them? They're not typical veterinary medications. They're more like what you'd use in illegal fighting operations. She met his eyes. Joshua, I think the puppy mills are just the surface. Preston's into something much bigger. Their hands brushed as they reached for the same document, and neither pulled away immediately. The contact lingered, charged with growing awareness. They'd been growing closer over the past few days, their shared mission creating a deep bond neither had expected. You know this makes you a target, Joshua said softly, concern evident in his voice. Preston won't stop at phone calls if we keep digging. Rebecca straightened her shoulders, her expression determined. I knew the risks when I started documenting these cases. I'm not stopping now. Joshua studied her face in the dim office light, seeing the same fierce commitment to justice that had once driven his own career. But there was something else too, a warmth and compassion that balanced her strength. We'll need to be careful, he said. Document everything. Create backup copies. Preston has a way of making evidence disappear. Along with witnesses, Rebecca added quietly, glancing at Duchess. The German shepherd had risen and was standing alertly by the door, her posture tense. A moment later, they heard footsteps in the clinic's darkened hallway. Rebecca quickly gathered the documents while Joshua moved to position himself between her and the door. Duchess growled softly, her hackles rising. The footsteps passed by, fading toward the exit. Just a late-night security guard making rounds. But the moment had driven home the reality of their situation. They were dealing with someone who wouldn't hesitate to silence threats to his operation, whether human or animal. The next afternoon found Joshua and Rebecca carefully picking their way through the abandoned construction site. The setting sun cast long shadows between half-finished buildings and piles of construction materials. Duchess walked slightly ahead, her posture tense and alert as she led them through the maze-like property. These building permits don't match the actual construction, Rebecca said, comparing documents on her tablet to their surroundings. There are whole sections here that aren't in any official plans. Joshua nodded grimly. Classic Preston. He always builds in hidden spaces for his illegal operations. He paused, studying a partially completed structure. We need to document everything before. The sudden crunch of gravel under tires cut him off. Duchess's ears perked up as multiple vehicles approached from different directions. Get down! Joshua pulled Rebecca behind a stack of concrete pipes just as headlights swept across the site. 3 black SUVs rolled to a stop surrounding the area. Rebecca clutched the carrier containing the recovering puppies closer to her chest. How did they know we were here? Motion sensors, probably, Joshua whispered, watching as 6 men emerged from the vehicles. The failing light glinted off weapons in their hands. Preston always monitors his properties. A harsh voice carried across the site. Find them. Boss wants this cleaned up tonight. No loose ends. Joshua's heart pounded as he assessed their situation. They were trapped between the building's skeleton and a row of heavy machinery. The armed men were spreading out in a search pattern, methodically closing in on their position. Duchess suddenly nudged Joshua's leg, whining softly and looking toward a gap between two concrete walls. Rebecca understood first. "She knows a way out," she whispered. "She escaped from here before." They crouched low and followed the German Shepherd, moving as quietly as possible through the shadows. Behind them, flashlight beams cut through the darkness. An engine roared to life, making them freeze. One of Preston's men had climbed into a massive excavator. The machine's arms swung toward their previous hiding spot, smashing into the concrete pipes with devastating force. "They're trying to flush us out," Joshua said, pulling Rebecca closer as debris rained down nearby. "Or crush us if they can't." Duchess led them through a narrow passage between buildings, then down into what looked like a drainage channel. The sound of the excavator grew louder, accompanied by shouts as their pursuers spotted movement. "There!" A gunshot cracked through the air, sending chips of concrete flying near their heads. They ran harder, following Duchess through a complex network of partially finished basement levels and utility tunnels. The German Shepherd moved with certainty, clearly familiar with these hidden routes from her time in captivity. The excavator smashed through a wall behind them, nearly catching Rebecca as she clutched the puppy carrier. Joshua pulled her through a tight gap just in time, the machine's metal teeth scraping the wall where she'd been standing seconds before. Duchess barked once, urgently, drawing their attention to a half-hidden entrance. They squeezed through into what appeared to be an old storm drain. "The security cameras," Rebecca gasped as they ran. "They'll have recorded everything." Joshua's eyes widened with sudden understanding. Preston's own surveillance system just caught his men trying to murder us. That's evidence we can actually use. They emerged from the drain near the property's edge, the sounds of pursuit now distant and confused. Duchess had led their pursuers on a winding path that completely disoriented them. They didn't stop running until they reached Joshua's car, hidden a block away. As they sped away into the night, Rebecca checked on the puppies, ensuring they were unharmed by the chaotic escape. "We need to get this footage before Preston realizes his mistake," Joshua said, hands tight on the steering wheel. "But even with proof of tonight's attack, it won't be enough." Rebecca looked up from comforting the frightened puppies. "What do you mean?" "Preston's too smart to let evidence of one attempted murder bring down his whole operation. The breeding business, the insurance fraud, it's all too organized, too extensive." Joshua shook his head. "This feels like a cover for something bigger." "The unusual medications I found in their orders," Rebecca said slowly. "The hidden spaces in the buildings. The level of security, ... Exactly. Preston wouldn't risk this much just for a puppy mill operation, no matter how profitable." Joshua glanced in the rearview mirror, making sure they weren't followed. "We need to figure out what he's really hiding." Duchess sat up straighter in the back seat, her eyes fixed intently on the road ahead, as if she understood the gravity of their situation. She had just saved their lives using her knowledge of Preston's property, knowledge that might prove crucial in exposing whatever sinister operation lay beneath the surface of his breeding business. Joshua sat at his desk late into the night, his eyes burning as he reviewed the security footage they'd managed to download from Preston's cameras. The grainy images showed more than just the attack. They revealed a pattern of suspicious activities that made his investigators' instincts tingle. "Look at this," he said to Rebecca, who was tending to the puppies in a makeshift bed nearby. "Every Tuesday and Friday, trucks arrive at 3 in the morning, but they're not pet supply vehicles." Rebecca moved closer, peering at his computer screen. "Those look like insurance company logos. Why would they be making regular deliveries to a construction site?" Joshua's fingers flew across the keyboard, cross-referencing dates and times. "They're not making deliveries. They're picking up documents." His face hardened as pieces started falling into place. "Preston's running the same scam he used to destroy me, but on a massive scale." He pulled up financial records he'd gathered from his insurance industry contacts. The numbers told a devastating story. "See these claim denials? All from different insurance companies, but they follow the same pattern. Families buy puppies from Preston's fronts, get pet insurance, then when the animals get sick. The claims are systematically denied, Rebecca finished, her voice tight with anger. He's profiting twice, first from selling sick animals, then from denying their medical care. Joshua nodded grimly. But it's bigger than that. Look at these payment trails. He showed her a complex web of transactions. The breeding business isn't just cruel, it's a money laundering operation. The cash from denied claims gets cycled through shell companies, then comes back clean through state-approved contracts. Rebecca's eyes widened. State contracts? You mean? Preston has politicians in his pocket. Joshua pulled up news articles showing Preston at charity events with state officials. He's got connections all the way up to the insurance commissioner's office. That's why local authorities ignored your reports. Duchess lay near the puppies, her ears perking up at their serious tones. Joshua looked at her thoughtfully. And that's why she's so important to him. She didn't just escape from a cruel breeding operation. She witnessed something that could bring down his entire network. Rebecca sat down heavily. The night she escaped, during the storm. You think she saw Preston personally eliminating unprofitable animals, maybe even her mate? Joshua's voice was grim. She's the only living witness who can connect him directly to murder. In court, her injuries and DNA evidence could prove she was there. The German Shepherd met Joshua's eyes with an intensity that sent chills down his spine. She seemed to understand they were discussing her traumatic past. Rebecca checked the puppy's vital signs, her medical training a comfort in the face of such overwhelming corruption. The medications I found in their orders make sense now. They weren't just running a puppy mill. They were deliberately making animals sick to generate insurance claims they could deny. Joshua pulled up more financial data. The numbers are staggering. Over $5 million in denied claims just in the past year. The breeding operation brings in another $3 million in sales of sick animals. All that money cleaned through government contracts and kicked back to corrupt officials. No wonder they tried to kill us at the construction site, Rebecca said softly, stroking Duchess's head. We're not just dealing with animal cruelty anymore. Preston will do anything to protect this network, Joshua agreed. The construction site attack wasn't just about silencing us. It was about eliminating Duchess. She's living proof of his direct involvement in criminal acts. He studied the German Shepherd, remembering how she'd found him that first day, desperate for help. She didn't choose me randomly. She's smart enough to recognize someone who could expose the truth. Rebecca moved closer to him, their shoulders touching as they watched Duchess tend to her puppies. So what do we do now? Preston has connections everywhere, and we're just the people who can bring him down, Joshua finished firmly. We have the security footage showing attempted murder. We have your medical documentation of systematic animal abuse. We have financial records showing the fraud network. And most importantly, he gestured to Duchess, who lifted her head proudly, we have a witness who can prove Preston's direct involvement. He knows it too. That's why he'll keep coming after us. Rebecca's hand found his, squeezing gently. Then we'll protect each other. All of us. Joshua looked at their joined hands, then at Duchess and her puppies, feeling a fierce determination replace his earlier exhaustion. The scope of Preston's crimes was larger than he'd imagined, but for the first time in years, he wasn't fighting alone. Joshua paced in his small apartment, frustration evident in every step. 3 separate calls to law enforcement contacts had led nowhere. The local police chief had been oddly dismissive. The state investigator seemed interested, but never called back. And his contact at the FBI had given him a cryptic warning to be careful who you trust. It's worse than we thought, he told Rebecca, who sat on his worn couch with case files spread around her. Duchess lay at her feet, watching Joshua's movements with alert eyes. Every official I've contacted either brushes us off or seems to tip Preston off somehow. Rebecca shuffled through some papers. I noticed something strange today. 2 health inspectors who previously documented violations at Preston's facilities suddenly changed their reports. Both got promotions last month. Preston's bought them all, Joshua said, stopping by the window to scan the street below, a habit he'd developed since the construction site attack. The police, health department, insurance regulators, they're all in his pocket. So what do we do? Rebecca asked, her voice steady despite the fear Joshua could see in her eyes. We can't just let him keep hurting these animals and defrauding people. Joshua turned to face her, his expression determined. We get the evidence ourselves. I've been studying the security patterns at his main breeding facility. There's a way in through the old drainage system. If we can document the conditions inside and access their financial records. That's incredibly dangerous, Rebecca interrupted, standing up. You saw what his men tried to do to us at the construction site. Which is exactly why we have to do this, Joshua said, moving closer to her. We're the only ones who can't be bought off, and we might not get another chance. Rebecca's hand found his arm, her touch sending warmth through his body despite the tension of the moment. Then we do it together. I need to see the medical conditions firsthand anyway. My testimony about the animal's treatment will be crucial. Joshua looked down at where her hand rested on his arm, then met her eyes. The professional partnership they'd built over the past weeks had grown into something deeper, something neither had acknowledged until this moment. I can't ask you to risk yourself like that, he said softly. You're not asking, I'm telling. Rebecca stepped closer, her voice firm despite its gentleness. We're in this together, Joshua. All of us. She glanced down at Duchess, who had moved to stand beside them, her tail wagging slowly. The German shepherd's presence reminded Joshua of how this had all started. One brave dog seeking help, leading him to both a crucial case and someone who made him feel whole again for the first time in years. Rebecca, he started, but she pressed a finger to his lips. I know, she said simply. I feel it too, and that's exactly why we have to stop Preston. Not just for the animals, but for us, for the future we could have. Joshua pulled her close, their first kiss both tender and fierce with shared purpose. When they separated, both wore slight smiles, despite the gravity of their situation. Tomorrow night, Joshua said, returning to planning mode while keeping hold of Rebecca's hand. Preston Security makes their shift change at 11 o'clock. That gives us a 15-minute window to get in through the drainage tunnel. Rebecca nodded, all business now despite the intimate moment they just shared. I'll bring my medical kit. We'll need to document any sick animals we find. And I've got a contact at the State Veterinary Board who might still be clean, someone who can verify my findings. I'll handle the office, Joshua said, pulling out blueprints he'd obtained of the facility. Their main computer system should have records of all the insurance claims and money transfers. If we can copy those files. A sharp bark from Duchess interrupted them. The German shepherd stood rigid, staring at the window. Moments later, they heard a car engine start outside. Joshua rushed to look, catching a glimpse of a black sedan pulling away. We're being watched, he said grimly. Preston knows we're planning something. Then we have to move fast, Rebecca replied, gathering their documents. He'll be expecting us to try something soon. Joshua nodded, his mind racing ahead to all the ways their infiltration could go wrong. But looking at Rebecca's determined face and feeling Duchess press against his leg supportively, he knew they had no choice. Preston had to be stopped, no matter the risk. Get everything ready, he told Rebecca. Tomorrow night we end this, one way or another. The stakes had never been higher, but for the first time since Preston had destroyed his life years ago, Joshua felt truly ready to fight back. With Rebecca and Duchess by his side, he finally had something worth fighting for. The night air crackled with tension as Joshua and Rebecca approached Preston's breeding facility. Their careful planning had accounted for everything except what they found when they arrived. Preston's black sedan parked haphazardly near the entrance, its driver's door still open. Something's wrong, Joshua whispered, pulling Rebecca behind a parked truck. Duchess pressed close to his leg, her ears alert. He shouldn't be here at this hour. Through the facility's windows, they could see erratic movement, Preston stalking from room to room, carrying something in his hands. The smell hit them next, gasoline. "He's going to burn it all down," Rebecca gasped, already pulling out her phone. "I'm calling Detective Martinez. She's the only one who believed us." Joshua watched in horror as the first orange glow appeared in a back room. "No time to wait. Those animals will die." He turned to Rebecca. "Get help here fast. I'm going in." Before she could protest, Joshua was moving, Duchess right beside him. They slipped in through their planned entrance, the drainage tunnel, just as smoke began filling the building's hallways. Inside, the sounds of panicked animals filled the air. Joshua worked methodically, using the bolt cutters they'd brought to free dogs from their cages, while Duchess guided them toward the exits. The smoke grew thicker with each passing minute. "You couldn't leave it alone, could you, Joshua?" Preston's voice echoed through the smoke-filled corridor. "Had to play hero one last time?" Joshua ushered another group of dogs toward freedom before turning to face his former partner. Preston stood at the end of the hallway, gasoline can in one hand, lighter in the other. His usually immaculate appearance was disheveled, his eyes wild with desperation. "It's over, Preston," Joshua called out. "The authorities are already on their way." Preston laughed, a harsh sound. "You think I care? Let it all burn. The evidence, the animals, you, all of it." He splashed gasoline along another wall, igniting it with a flick of his lighter. The fire spread faster than either man expected, racing along walls and ceiling. Joshua could hear Rebecca outside, coordinating with arriving emergency vehicles. More animals needed saving, but Preston stood between Joshua and the remaining kennels. Duchess growled, positioning herself between Joshua and Preston. The German Shepherd's presence seemed to drive Preston into a new level of fury. "That dog," he snarled. "She saw too much. Should have killed her when I had the chance, like I did her mate." He lunged forward suddenly, aiming a kick at Duchess. The German Shepherd dodged, but Preston's true target was revealed, a heavy metal safe behind where she had been standing. He yanked it open, reaching for files inside. "Your precious evidence," Preston taunted, holding up folders filled with documents. "All the proof you needed, burning away." But as Preston turned to throw the files into the nearest flames, a burning beam crashed down, cutting off his escape route. The fire had spread behind him while he focused on Joshua, creating a ring of flames. "Preston!" Joshua shouted, seeing his former partner trapped. "Take my hand!" Instead of accepting help, Preston clutched the files to his chest and stepped backward, deeper into the flames. "I won't let you win," he spat. "Not again." The ceiling groaned ominously. Joshua had seconds to decide. Try to save Preston or get the remaining animals out. Duchess made the choice easier, barking urgently and tugging him toward the kennels they hadn't reached yet. Preston's final act made the decision clear. Even as flames licked at his expensive suit, he grabbed a piece of burning debris and hurled it at Duchess. "Die with your secrets!" he screamed. Joshua pulled Duchess clear as more of the ceiling collapsed, separating them from Preston. Through the flames, Joshua caught a final glimpse of his former partner, still clutching his precious files as the fire consumed him. Working quickly, Joshua and Duchess freed the remaining animals. They emerged from the burning building to find Rebecca directing firefighters and police officers. She ran to them, throwing her arms around both Joshua and Duchess. "Detective Martinez is here," she said breathlessly. "And the state police. They found Preston's political contacts trying to destroy records at City Hall. It's all coming apart." Joshua watched the burning building, knowing that somewhere inside lay the remains of a man consumed by his own evil. "He chose this," he said quietly. Right to the end, he chose destroying evidence over saving himself. Duchess pressed against his leg comfortingly as they watched the facility burn, its dark secrets turning to ash while its innocent victims found safety in the night. In the pre-dawn hours after the fire, Joshua sat on the back of an ambulance while a paramedic checked him for smoke inhalation. Duchess lay at his feet, refusing to leave his side, even as veterinary technicians treated her minor burns. Through the organized chaos of emergency vehicles and flashing lights, he watched Rebecca directing the care of the rescued animals. "You're lucky," the paramedic said, removing the oxygen mask from Joshua's face. "No serious damage, but you should still get checked at the hospital." Joshua nodded absently, his attention drawn to the stream of police cars arriving at the scene. Detective Martinez stepped out of one, her badge catching the emergency lights as she approached. "Mr. Brown," she called out, "we're going to need your statement, but first you should know. We just arrested 3 city council members and Preston's insurance company executives. They were trying to destroy documents at City Hall." She smiled grimly. "Your evidence gave us everything we needed." News vans began pulling up to the scene, reporters already going live with their coverage. Joshua heard fragments of their broadcasts. "Your heroic rescue of dozens of animals, insurance fraud scheme exposed, systematic abuse uncovered." Rebecca joined them, looking exhausted but determined. "The puppies are stable," she reported, kneeling to check Duchess again. "We've transferred them to my clinic. All the rescued animals are getting immediate medical attention." Detective Martinez pulled out her notebook. "Dr. Torres, your documented cases were crucial. Years of suspicious deaths, denied claims, all fitting the pattern. Combined with Mr. Brown's financial investigation, it's ironclad." As the sun rose, Joshua watched police leading away more of Preston's associates in handcuffs. Years of corruption and cruelty were finally being exposed to the light. His phone started buzzing with calls from his old insurance industry contacts, people who had once turned their backs on him, now eager to acknowledge his vindication. "Your reputation won't just be restored," Rebecca said softly, sitting beside him. "You're going to be known as the person who brought down one of the biggest insurance fraud operations in the state." Joshua looked down at Duchess, who gazed back with complete trust. "None of that would have happened if she hadn't found me that day." He scratched behind her ears. "She chose me to help her save her puppies. Now I want to choose her. All of them." Rebecca's eyes softened. "You want to adopt them?" "They're family now," Joshua said simply. "Duchess, her puppies. They helped me find my way back to who I really am. They deserve a real home." "They'll need ongoing medical care," Rebecca said, but her smile showed she already knew his response. "Good thing I know an amazing veterinarian," Joshua replied, meeting her eyes. The connection between them, forged in danger and strengthened by shared purpose, had grown into something deeper. Rebecca's hand found his. "I was thinking of opening my own practice," she said. "One focused on helping rescued animals, working with law enforcement on abuse cases. There's clearly a need. The insurance companies will need someone they can trust to evaluate claims properly," Joshua added. "Someone who knows what to look for, who won't ignore signs of systematic abuse." Their quiet moment was interrupted by more commotion as state police arrived with warrant teams. Detective Martinez returned with updates. "We're seizing records from every property connected to Preston's network," she reported. "Insurance companies are already pledging full cooperation with the investigation. Dr. Torres, they'll need your expertise to review years of suspicious claims." Rebecca nodded. "I'll help however I can. These animals deserve better." As morning fully arrived, the emergency activity began to shift toward investigation and recovery. Joshua watched Rebecca coordinate with animal rescue organizations to place the saved dogs in temporary homes. Duchess remained by his side, as if knowing she already had her forever home. "You should get to the hospital," Rebecca said, returning to check on him. "I'll take care of everyone here and meet you there later." Joshua caught her hand. "Thank you," he said quietly. "Not just for helping with the investigation, but for believing in me when you had every reason to play it safe." Rebecca squeezed his hand. "You did the same for me. No one took my concerns seriously until you came along." She glanced at Duchess. She knew exactly who to ask for help. As Joshua finally agreed to go to the hospital, with Duchess naturally insisting on riding along, he reflected on how a desperate German shepherd had led him not just to uncover a criminal conspiracy, but to find healing, purpose, and love. The road ahead would involve recovery and adjustment for all of them. But for the first time in years, he looked forward to building a future. One that included a dedicated veterinarian, a loyal dog, and 3 puppies who needed a father as much as he needed a family. The weeks following the fire brought dramatic changes to Joshua's life. Local newspapers ran front-page stories detailing his investigation, with headlines like, "Hero Investigator Exposes Multi-State Animal Abuse Ring," and "Vindication. Whistleblower's Return Brings Down Criminal Empire." His phone rang constantly with calls from former clients and colleagues, all eager to reconnect now that his reputation was restored. But on this particular autumn morning, Joshua wasn't thinking about headlines or vindication. He sat on the floor of his new home office, surrounded by moving boxes, with Duchess's head resting contentedly in his lap. Through the window, he could see Rebecca playing with the 3 puppies in the fenced backyard of what was now their shared home. "What do you think of the new sign, girl?" he asked Duchess, who perked her ears at his voice. The freshly mounted plaque on his desk read, "Brown and Associates, Ethical Investigations, Animal Welfare Division." Duchess gave an approving tail wag as Rebecca entered, bringing the energetic puppies with her. The formerly sickly pups were now healthy balls of energy, racing around Joshua's legs before collapsing in a pile with their mother. "The clinic renovation is almost finished," Rebecca announced, sitting beside him on the floor. "The new animal welfare examination room will be ready next week. Perfect timing with all the insurance companies sending us cases." Joshua nodded, thinking about how quickly things had evolved. After the media coverage of Preston's downfall, insurance companies across 3 states had approached him about reviewing suspicious claims. His new firm specialized in investigating potential abuse cases, working closely with Rebecca's expanding veterinary practice to protect animals from exploitation. "Speaking of cases," Rebecca continued, pulling out her tablet, "we've got 2 more insurance companies wanting to retain us as consultants. They're finally taking systematic abuse seriously." "Thanks to you," Joshua said, reaching for her hand. "Your years of documenting suspicious cases gave us the pattern we needed. You never gave up, even when no one would listen." Rebecca squeezed his hand, watching as the puppies played with their mother. "We make a good team, professional and personal." The sound of the doorbell interrupted their moment. Joshua opened the front door to find Detective Martinez on their porch, holding a formal-looking envelope. "Thought you'd want to see this in person," she said, handing him the document. "The governor's office just announced a new animal welfare task force. They want both you and Dr. Torres to serve as special advisors." Joshua invited her in, and they gathered in the living room, where Duchess immediately greeted the detective who had helped bring down Preston's network. The puppies tumbled over each other to join the welcome committee. "The task force will review state policies on breeding operations and insurance claim investigations," Martinez explained. "Your case exposed huge gaps in the system. They want your expertise to help close them." Rebecca joined them, reading the official letter over Joshua's shoulder. This could help prevent another Preston from exploiting animals for profit. "That's not all," Martinez added with a smile. "The state insurance commissioner is implementing new protocols for investigating suspicious claims. They're calling it the Brown-Torres Protocol. Every investigator will be trained to recognize signs of systematic abuse." Joshua felt Duchess press against his leg, her presence a constant reminder of how this all began. He remembered that desperate night when she'd sought his help, how close they'd come to losing her puppies. Now she was the inspiration for changes that would protect countless other animals. Later that evening, after Martinez left and the puppies were sleeping in their bed beside Duchess, Joshua and Rebecca sat on their back porch. The setting sun cast a warm glow over their newly shared home, a modest house with a large yard perfect for their growing family of rescued dogs. "Did you ever imagine this?" Rebecca asked, gesturing to their peaceful scene. "When Duchess first found you at my clinic?" Joshua shook his head. "I was so broken then. Angry at Preston, at the world. I'd lost faith in everything." He watched Duchess through the patio door, sleeping protectively near her puppies. "She reminded me why I became an investigator in the first place, to protect those who can't protect themselves." Rebecca leaned against him. Now you're doing that more effectively than ever. Your new firm, the task force, the protocol, you're changing the whole system. We're changing it, Joshua corrected her. I couldn't have done any of this without you. You gave me back my purpose, and so much more. Their quiet moment was interrupted by puppy chaos as the three youngsters woke from their nap, demanding evening playtime. Joshua and Rebecca laughed as Duchess herded her energetic brood into the yard, keeping them safely within bounds while they burned off energy. They need names, Rebecca said suddenly. We can't keep calling them Puppies 1, 2, and 3. Joshua watched the three siblings playing, their personalities now distinct and clear. How about Justice, Honor, and Hope, he suggested, since they helped us find all three. Rebecca smiled, understanding the meaning behind each name. Perfect, our little family of survivors. As darkness fell, they called the dogs inside. Duchess led her puppies, now Justice, Honor, and Hope, back into the house, each one receiving loving pats as they passed. Joshua watched his newly formed family settle into their evening routine, marveling at how completely his life had transformed. Where once he'd been alone and bitter, focused only on survival, he now had purpose, love, and a true family, both human and canine. His new firm was already making a difference, working with Rebecca's clinic to protect animals from abuse and exploitation. Together, they were building something meaningful from the ashes of Preston's cruelty. The evening news played quietly in the background, running yet another story about the ongoing investigations into Preston's former network. But Joshua's attention was on his present, not the past, on Rebecca reviewing case files while petting Honor, on Justice and Hope playing tug-of-war with their favorite rope toy, on Duchess watching over them all with contentment in her intelligent eyes. This was his redemption, not in headlines or official recognition, but in the simple reality of love given and received, of purpose found through protecting the innocent. He had transformed from a man broken by betrayal into someone who had found his true calling, surrounded by the family he never expected but desperately needed. Thank you for watching. If even one moment stayed with you, don't forget to subscribe. I'll be here tomorrow with another story that speaks to the heart.